Hello, everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is Saturday morning, the 23rd, I think, the 23rd of April. And as you can see, I'm here with my wonderful, amazing, incredible, and beautiful grandson, Reese Astle. And we are going to tell you stories today. Maybe even more than one story today. You never know what's going to happen. But before we do that, I'd like first of all to say good morning to Great Eagle, who is between us. And I'd also like to say good morning to who?
Chris.
To Chris. Say good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Rosemary and Reese. How are you two today?
Good.
We're good. Say good morning.
Good morning.
We're very good. We've actually put the puppy on time out, but we could fetch him out as we go along, couldn't we? We could bring him out, but he's. When I say time out, that makes it sound as if he's done something naughty, and he hasn't actually. We just like to put him, excuse me, in having some quiet time, because that otherwise he doesn't always have enough sleep during the day. And then he gets crazy, doesn't he? So
yesterday he had a bad leg, and at night, remember, he was running around.
He was. Yesterday, for some reason, we think he must have sprained his leg somehow, his back leg, and he was walking around on three legs, and he was holding his leg. The back leg, wasn't he, as if it was in a little bit of pain, but we checked him out and he seemed okay. And what happened this morning? Perfectly fine, right? He was perfectly fine again. So Chris, is there anybody there?
Oh, there's always people here. They just climb aboard right away. So we have Judy and Rhonda and Eric and Cheryl and Annalie and Simone. They're all sitting here waiting with bated breath for story time.
Well, that's great. So yes, today is story time. I thought today, because Chris was telling me a story this morning about a lady. Chris, do you want to tell the story of what you read, and then we'll go from there, I think.
Oh, I wish I had kept it open, but essentially, a woman who's a mom of twins in first grade, I believe, posted on Twitter that she lost her husband last night.
And she said her life would never be the same again.
Exactly. And there were many people who responded, of course, because everybody loses somebody. I should say, people lose people every day on this earth.
Every day. So,
once upon a time, as all stories must begin.
Good, as all good stories must begin. Yes, are we ready? We ready to tell the story? So, yes, say it again.
Once upon a time, as all stories must begin,
there was, many, many years ago, a man. He'd been married for probably about 15 years, but he'd known his wife for at least 20 years. And his wife died unexpectedly. And he came to me because he just didn't know what to do, where else to go. He just had no idea of how to deal with his life without his love, without his partner, without his chosen partner by his side. And when Chris read me the article that she read this morning, my life will never be the same again. And I think that so many of us who have not had a loss do not understand that loss, trauma, brings many changes. The word trauma means change, simply means change. And your life changes when you lose someone close to you, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a partner, it could even be a business partner, whether it's a child or a parent. life is never the same again. And but it's almost as if the response from this lady when she said, you know, my life will never be the same again, it's almost as if the response obviously drew so many people who feel the same way to her. But the truth of the matter is that we should know that already, shouldn't we? We should know absolutely that when we have lost someone, and if you are a fortunate person who's never yet lost someone, you won't understand this. But even if you lose someone who isn't that close to you, things change, life changes. Things are never the same again. And often things are never the same again because we think differently. We hurt, we're in pain, but through our hurts and through our pains and through our tears, we learn lots of lessons. It is awful when uh, a spouse dies and the one who is left behind has young children to deal with. And I see that so many times. Life changes. When we lose someone, life is never the same again because we are not the same again and we're not thinking the same as we used to do. We don't have a partner to snuggle up to or to say good night to. We don't have a friend who we can confide in. We don't have that person who we always went to the movies with or we watched a great show on TV. We don't have that anymore. And this man, who many years ago came to see me because he'd lost his wife, he was one of those people who so struggled and struggled and struggled and struggled. And it didn't matter how many times he came to see me and had proof of his wife's existence, he just could not get over the grief. He was so steeped in the grief of what had happened, he just could not deal with it. Life for him would never ever be the same again. When we lose someone, and this gentleman was so in love with his wife as she was with him, and he had so many sessions with me where his wife came through to talk to him, to show him that she was with him, to show him that she was watching him, but still, as he would say to me over and over again, but I don't see her. I don't feel her. You do, Rosemary, which is why I come to see you. You see her, you hear her, she can talk to you, but I can't talk to her. When I'm in bed at night, I can't feel her lying next to me. For the last 20 years, we've laid in the same bed together. We've cuddled together. We've talked together. We've had conversations. How am I supposed to go on with my life now that she's not there? And it's a very hard thing for someone like me to be able to say to them, well, if you do this or you do that, because we don't have the answers. The only answer that we can give, the only true answer, which for all of you listening who have lost someone, you will want to pop me one in the nose when I say it, because the worst thing in the world, as far as I am concerned, that you can say to someone who's suffering a loss is, and people do it all the time, give it time. Give it time. It'll get easier with time. But those who have suffered a loss will know that sometimes it gets easier, but then sometimes it gets harder. I've known people, I have two really wonderful friends whose son was 16 years old when he was killed, very tragically, by a train, actually. Um, what would it be, 30 years ago? So that boy now would be 46. His parents are in their 70s. If I were to say to them now, did time help? They would probably say, time helps because you learn how to deal with it, but the pain never goes away. Life will never be the same, ever. And in a way, it's foolish of us to expect life to be the same. Of course it's not going to be the same. The people that we love in the world are no longer with us. How can life be the same? But life evolves and life changes. And that's what life is about. Life is about making changes. Life is about changing ourselves as people. Life is about dealing with the ups and downs. And some of us have so many struggles in order to do it. Coming back to this lovely man, and he was a lovely man, and he had kids, teenage kids that he had to deal with, and he had to help them over their grief too. But the pain in his heart never went away. Life will never be the same again. That doesn't mean that it can't be joyful. It doesn't mean that it has to be tragedy forevermore. It simply means it's not the same. It's not the same as it used to be. But that doesn't mean that we can't find joy. We can't find happiness. We can't find another way to live our lives. And I think that it is so helpful for so many people who are suffering these kinds of losses, which change their lives, never to be the same again. I think that those people who know or believe in life after death, those people who know that their loved ones in the spirit world are with them, I think they have a better chance and are better able in so many ways to not get over the loss, because we never get over the loss of those we love, ever. But we do learn to live our lives accepting the loss, understanding that our loved ones are there and waiting for us, and that one day when it's our time to leave this earth, they'll be there waiting for us and helping us to live our lives and continue on living our lives. Never the same again, because now we're living our lives not on this earth, we're living our lives in a whole other way, but just as joyful and just as wonderful. So what did I say to this man again and again and again, knowing that all he wanted to do was pop me on the nose, give me a good old pop on the nose, because he was so tired of listening to people saying to him, give it time, give it time. But the truth of the matter is, it is only time that helps us, that helps us to deal with the tragedies that we have. It is only time that in that time, given time, we can evolve. We can learn to live with the tragedies as we learn to live with the joys and the traumas. You know, 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago, whenever it was, when COVID came out, everybody was panicking. Oh my gosh, life is never going to be the same again. It's going to be awful. It's going to be terrible. And for so many people, it was. But a loss is a whole other thing, because COVID, obviously, we're getting over it, aren't we? We're dealing with it. But the loss of someone who we love, let's be clear, we can never get over it, nor should we try to get over the loss of someone. This is what I told this man who came to me with the loss of his wife. And he came to me for years and years and years. Less and less, because as time went on, he grew more and more confident. Eventually, he found another partner. Eventually, he learned to be happy again, but that still didn't take away the pain of losing his wife. His life would never be the same again, but it could be at least equally wonderful if he allowed it. If we allow it, our lives, even though we're suffering the loss and the pain of our loved ones, can be equally wonderful and can be joyful and can be happy if we allow it. I think that's the end of that story. Do you want to say the end there?
The end.
What do you think to what Lucy just was talking about? Do you have any thoughts on that? Well, you lost Piper, didn't you? Yeah. And it was horrible and awful, but given time, and now you've got a Patchy, life is better again, isn't it? And happier again. Yes. And it's happy for you knowing that Piper's good and safe, right? So, Chris, I know that, and most people who come on the show know that you lost Mike. So what I'm saying must be very close to your heart. Do you have anything to add or anything to say to what we've been talking about, to our story today?
Well, it was interesting to me even that out of, whatever amount of tweets that pass by my screen, I'm a rare follower of Twitter, that even that sentiment of a person I don't even know came across my screen, so are meant to be. And my first thought when I read her say, "I'll never be the same again," was, "You're right. You are absolutely correct." But I think I actually responded to that Twitter and I said, "It is true. You will not. The lessons that you will begin to learn about yourself will change you even more than his passing." And then, of course, I suggested that she pick up your book, The Eagle and the Rose, because, as you said earlier, just having the knowledge that the people we love didn't die, they have passed, is a huge source of relief and comfort.
And also understanding, because so many people, when they lose someone, their first question, especially if it's sudden, but even so, perhaps, in any circumstance, the big question, why? And everyone who loses someone has that question. Why them? Why me? Why us? And I think that the Eagle and the Rose answers some of those questions too. Why? Because God decides. Who cares? Well, how does God have the right? We get angry, we get frustrated, but just nevertheless, that is the reason why. No explanations, particularly. Um, I always say, when God calls, that's it. We have to respond to Him, and we do respond to Him. Why this person? Why not that person? Why this person who never hurt anybody in their life? Why does he have to die when that awful person around the corner who's beating up on his dog every day of the week? Why not him? And we have, so many whys, and why this, why that, why can't it have been somebody else, and so on and so forth, and on we go with the whys. And it's so hard, and it's so frustrating. Of course, there are many stages of grief. There are many stages that people have to go through when they have to deal with something like this. I know, Chris, this subject is very, very close to your heart, and I know it's very close to the hearts of many people who'll be listening to this show. Why did it have to be him? Why did it have to be her? Well, my question is, when people say, why me? My answer is, and why not? We know, don't we, as human beings, how fragile our bodies are, how easily we can, be damaged. I mean, it's only last summer that I fell and sort of broke a few bones in my foot there. We know how fragile we are. We know how fragile life is, but yet still, when it ends, either by the loss of someone else, or the loss of ourselves, the why me comes along. But why not? Why not? Which is why it's so important to live every single day as if it is your last day. Don't, don't be dissuaded by, we've got so much technology. Life goes on, but just, don't be complacent about it. And so often we are complacent about our lives. So often we really are. I remember a lady coming to see me for a consultation, and she and her husband were really close, but boy, was she was a nag, and she made him do every time he walked through the door, she had another job for him to do. And she loved him and he loved her, but she was a real bossy boots. And I remember saying to her, you need to be very careful and very gentle and make the most of your life with your husband, because you don't know when that life is going to end between you. And once it ends, here we go, life will not ever be the same again. And that lady took my words to heart, and she took a good look at herself and how she wanted to live her life. And she decided she wanted to have a happy marriage, and she knew what to do to change her life in the way of dealing with things that would give her and her husband a better chance at a happy marriage. So many people know what to do, but they don't necessarily do it. She did it, and a year later she came back to me, and she came for her appointment, and the first thing she said to me was, I'm so glad that I came to you last year, Rosemary, and I'm so glad that I listened to you, because my husband died 2 weeks ago, and it would have been awful if I'd been treating him the way I had been treating him. I was able to change my life. I was able to change our life together, and I was able to make it better. So let's not be complacent about who we are and what we do with our lives. Let's make the most of our lives and live every day as if it is our last. And having said that,
it's
our last day on our vacation. It's not our last day together. We hope it is our last day on our vacation. Right? So what do you want to do? Do you want to stay and listen, or do you want to go and play in the pool? You can do whatever you like.
Not to go.
Say bye-bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
See you later, Reese.
Reese, you really wanted to join us, didn't you? Thank you for joining us. Go.
You did a fantastic job opening up for us.
Thank you.
He did, didn't he? Okay. Bye, darling. I love you. Oh, I was leaning on that. You can leave that here for me. Thank you. So, Chris, over to you.
All right. Rhonda's first comment was, my dad passed a year and a half ago. Some days I miss him so badly I'm in tears all day, and other days I'm just fine. I've accepted that as the new norm, and never, never tell someone that has lost someone that time will heal. It's simply not true. And Maggie seconds that one.
Good. It really isn't. And it is an old and very worn out phrase. People who say it really, they mean well, but they have no clue, because perhaps they haven't suffered or lost someone that close to them, or someone who has been so affected. Time doesn't heal, but what time gives us is the opportunity to learn, to grow, and to find a way to live our life in the best way that we can. Time gives us the opportunity to learn to live with our suffering, and to learn to live with the pain that we have. Because truthfully, whether you lost a child, you lost a spouse, you lost a loved one, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 30 years ago, there are days when the pain is so excruciating, and it comes back in such an awful, awful way. It very often catches you unawares. But we learn to live with it, and we learn to know what to do with it. And we learn, hopefully, if we're fortunate, not to bury the pain, but to embrace the pain, because it's the pain that helps us and teaches us to learn and to grow.
Rosemary, maybe you can speak to at this point, because what do you have left when you're feeling that low, right? We all need sort of a meaning or a purpose to our lives, a reason to go on despite the, agony we're in at the moment when this happens. Is there some way you can speak to the listeners about that?
Well, I think, I think it's important, especially for those of us, we believe in life after death. We believe that our loved ones are close by us. There are so many times that people in the spirit world say to me, could you please ask them just to smile for me once a day, or to just give me a smile? Could you please ask them to find a little bit of joy, some just even if it's only something small, we need to see them smile, because we have to remember that when we're in heartbreak and in pain and struggling, our loved ones in the spirit world are there, right there with us. They're in pain for us. They are struggling for us. So in some ways, it's, I always say to people, you know, we who are left behind have a responsibility to those who have gone to live our lives in the best possible way that we can, for the sake of our loved ones in the spirit world who are watching us. Um, and I think also, I think it's very important that we remember that death, even though it seems, when we say, well, why me? And why did it happen to me? Why did it happen to my family? Why did it happen to her? She was the nicest and the best person in the world, and so on. We're acting as if death is some kind of a punishment, that death is a terrible thing that happens. So the truth is that death happens to every single one of us. None of us is going to escape it. Some of us will meet it sooner and some of us will meet it later. But death is not a punishment. And I think if you can keep that in mind, that death is a transition, and a joyful one for so many of us. It's a wonderful transition and a continuation of, you know, us living in a way that we can't possibly continue living on this earth plane. As we've already said, our physical bodies are fragile, but our spiritual bodies are very strong. There's great strength, and our spiritual bodies are indestructible, actually indestructible. Life is not, death, should I say, is not a punishment. It's something that is wonderful and joyful, that every single one of us is going to experience sooner or later. And it's a joyful and incredible thing. So I think it's very important that for those of us who are left behind, we tend to get in our own way sometimes, because we tend to think that we are the only, they're gone, you know, they're all right, they're fine, they're gone. But we're left behind, and poor me, and how awful is this for me? Which it is. And we have every right to say, poor me. Of course we do. That's what grieving is about. We're entitled to grieve. However, if you think that next step, that while we are grieving, while we are crying, while we're sitting on the bed and sort of, you know, just completely lost and alone, our loved ones are by our side. They're sitting there watching us and helpless to do anything for us. So they're in their own grief because they don't know how to help. So if we can take that next step when we are grieving to say, yes, it's okay to grieve. However, here's my smile for you for the day. Even if it's a hard thing for me to do, I'm giving it to you anyway. Because if you truly love those in the spirit world, if you truly love those that you've lost, you want for them to be happy, you want for them to be settled. You don't want them, if you truly love them, you don't want them to be miserable with you. You want them to make the best of their lives, as they're hoping that you will make the best of your lives.
Cheryl says, my mother died in 1979 at age 45. I have never, quote, gotten over it. However, life lessons and time have made it easier, even if I still miss her every day.
Well, as I said, my darling, we never get over the loss of those we love. And, you know, the people who say to you, give it time, you'll get over it, they're the people who don't know. They don't understand. They've never suffered that loss. They've never had to deal with a really painful loss. Or if they have, it's in some ways, you know, they don't understand, or it's maybe a more shallow feeling, because anyone who says to someone who is in deep grief, you know, give it time, you'll get over it. You know, you really want to bop them in the nose, don't you? Uh, so, so you're dealing with people who don't understand. You'll never get over these awful losses, these painful losses. You will always with my daddy, I'm fortunate because I'm able to see him. With my brother, I'm fortunate because I'm able to see him too. But being able to see them uh, is wonderful. But if you, like me, believe in life after death, whether or not you can see them, like the man in the story I told this morning, he couldn't see his wife. Well, I can't see her, so I can't hold her and I can't cuddle her. The more we are saying, I can't do this and I can't do that, the more we won't be able to do it because we're putting up our own emotional wall, aren't we? So try if you can to stay open. Try if you can to allow your loved ones in the spirit world to connect with you in one way or another. In other words, don't put up the walls that say, I can't, I can't, I can't, or, you know, I can't, it's all right for you, but I can't do this. Just be more open. Perhaps if I take my time, if I take a deep breath, perhaps if I learn to listen more attentively, maybe I can do it too. Have that positive attitude rather than a negative attitude. Remember, life is not a punishment, not a punishment for those who have gone, and certainly not a punishment for those who are left behind, although it feels like a punishment. I remember when my father died, um, it was such a devastating time. I remember I was barely able to eat. I was for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, going into months, I was, you know, so lost in my own thoughts. And that's me. Who knows there is a life after death? But being without that person in a physical sense, being able to just go or pick up the phone or go and visit them, just having them there. But life is short, and these things, and I know, Chris, you feel this way about this, life is short. You never know when you are going to have that loss. Even for those who have someone who's ill for years, you never know. You're never quite prepared for when it happens. Life is short, so make the most of every day.
Well, you were saying earlier, Rosemary, I can't, I can't, I can't. Of course, I can't do it in your accent. Um, this might be the time to speak about mantras and power words.
Well, yes. I don't know though if that's well, maybe we should. Power words. Let me just give you a few of them. I is a very strong power word. Uh, me is a strong power word. Can, will, shall, can't, won't, right? Positive power words and negative power words. The more we say positive power words, I can do this, I will learn to do this, I will do this, they drive you forward. They're words of power. They carry their own energy. And the more we use power words, the more we're able to drive ourselves forward. However, every time you say, I can't, or I won't, or it's impossible, that they're two words, but impossible, every time we use negative words, they drive us into negativity and we start believing our own negativity. So we need to use power words. And if you use power words in a mantra, and some of you may be saying, well, what is a mantra? So I'll very briefly tell you that a mantra is a sequence of words of power. Shall I do that again? A mantra is a sequence of words of power. So in a sentence, I will, I can, I is a power word, can is a power word. I can be happy and all good things will come to me. That's a good mantra. You can say them, a sequence of words of power, and you say this sentence or two sentences that you have here that are filled with words of power, preferably positive power, please. You say them, you repeat those, that phrase 10 times over, 3 times a day. And let me tell you, a mantra really works because it's not giving you power. You already have the power. It's reminding you that you have the power. Those sequence of words of power. A mantra is something that reminds you of the power that you have, and we all have that power. We all have the power to have a positive outlook in life, and we all have the power to have a negative outlook in life. Which are you going to choose? I know what I choose. What are you going to choose? All right, Chris, any more questions or comments? What have we got going on
Oh
here?
yeah, we're playing catch up on comments. So Maggie says, I talk to my daughter and my parents every day, and I feel she/they hear me. My two daughters, though, miss their sister so much and roll their eyes at me when I tell them to talk to her. And I think Maggie's got an interesting comment that I myself have experienced. So when I have a belief that life does go on and that Mike is around and other people don't, it's frustrating or it's sad or it's aggravating. Maybe you can give us all some advice on how to handle people when they say things like that,
You've
or
got to allow people to have their own point of view. You wouldn't like it if somebody else were to try to convince you of of their beliefs which go against yours. You wouldn't like it if somebody else tried to insist. So by all means have your beliefs. By all means, continue to do what you're doing. Not only talking to those in the spirit world, but Maggie, listening is also important as well. By all means do that. But if somebody else doesn't follow that or doesn't believe it, could you leave them alone? And why are you getting frustrated? Why are you getting annoyed at somebody else who does not have the same belief system as you? Stop trying to convince everyone else. People come up to me all the time and they say, I don't believe in what you do. And I don't care. All right, then, that's fine then. If you don't believe it, it's fine. I'm not going to stop being your friend if you don't believe it, unless you're going to be rude to me or mean to me. That's a whole other thing. But everybody is entitled to their belief systems, and it's not up to any of us to try and force our beliefs on other people. Live, here we go. How about this for a phrase? Live and let live. Be tolerant of other people's beliefs. Be understanding that they don't believe what you believe. So maybe later in life they'll come to believe it or not. It's their choice. Everybody has a choice, and being tolerant of other people's choices is one of the things that we strive for in our spiritual lives. And if you're failing at it, well, you have to look at yourself and ask yourself, well, why are you failing at understanding that everybody is entitled to their own beliefs and their own belief systems? Just because you believe it doesn't mean everybody else does. And in fact, if I believed something so much so, and 95% of the rest of the world didn't believe it, if I believed it, and I truly believed it for its own benefit, not because I'm being stubborn, but if I truly believe something, I'd hold on to my beliefs, and it wouldn't matter to me what anybody else thought of that. It only matters to me what I believe. And this is what I tell people all this time. It doesn't matter whether you believe in what I'm saying. It doesn't matter what you believe, whether you believe in what I'm talking about. It only matters to me that I believe, because, death happens to every one of us. We've already talked about it. Nobody's going to escape it. And at the end of the road, when it's my time, I want to be able to look at myself and say, I lived my life in my way, in a right way that was right for me, and not harmful, hopefully, to anybody else around. So you've got to stop hoping, wishing, being irritated that other people are going to believe what you believe in. It should be simply enough for you to know that you believe it and let it go.
Annika says, I can so relate after losing my darling Neil. I know he is with me, but the hard part is missing his physical presence,
Yes,
feeling his touch, seeing his face.
yes. it is, my darling, and I agree with you. Um, it's so hard, but sometimes I have people telling me all the time. I went to bed last night, I went to sleep, and I sort of half woke up feeling that someone, meaning my husband or my wife, they were snuggling me. Was that real, Rosemary? You bet yourself, you bet your life it was real, absolutely real. the I've had that experience, oh gosh, so many times in my life when I've actually felt somebody in bed with me, and snuggling or cuddling or just being present there. But when I say, I'm not talking about some sort of, just a feeling. I'm talking about an actual feeling of a physical presence. The spirit body is far more solid and far more real than the physical. Maybe I'll tell a story or two about that in a week or so. Keep going, Chris.
Well, Annika continued saying, someone said to me, uh, every next day you live will also be a day closer to heaven and being reunited.
Yes, there you are. Oh, I like that. That is so true. It is so very true. And every day matters too. I would say that every single day matters.
Judith says, over my lifetime, I have lost so many loved ones, friends and family. I was deeply hurt by the losses, especially my beloved family members. Time dulls the sharpness of the pain, but I miss them.
Yes. And you will continue to miss them, my lovely, until it's your time to go. And they'll be there waiting for you. We're hoping in a long time to come because we want you with us. Selfishly, we want you to stay around.
And Cheryl says, when I pass, I want there to be a party, music, food, and fun.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Music, food, and fun. It reminds me of the family who were given by their neighbour a message. This man. I think I told this story a while ago, but this man came to me because his neighbour allowed him to listen to a tape recording that she'd made, and she thought that she'd come to talk to her parents and her brother, and it turned out that her neighbour who had died wanted to talk about herself and her husband and her family. So the whole session was about the neighbour, who eventually came to me just before the funeral, actually, and he and his brother came, and they had such an amazing experience with me. And of course his wife came through and told him all sorts of things, and things that I couldn't possibly know. And he told me afterwards, because he and his brother came back to see me afterwards, and he said to me, he said, I know that, we had so many people at the funeral. He said, but nobody could understand Rosemary. He said, I went home, I played my tape recording to my family. He said, nobody could understand why we, the family, on the day of the funeral, why we were all smiling and happy. Isn't that nice?
Well, that reminds me of when Mike passed last June. I was sitting in the church and obviously I was crying and overcome, with the grief of the sudden loss. But I was also sitting there and looking at all the faces of the people that turned up. And I began to smile because I thought, well, Mike can hear what they're thinking. And Mike
Yes,
can pop in on any conversation he wants to. And
no
Mike can now
secrets.
Right, and Mike can now feel and understand how much he was cared for by people, and that
Yeah,
thought, pulled me right out, like, he got to be the spy amongst everybody, and that made
yeah,
me chuckle a little bit even while I was sitting in church.
yeah. How nice, right?
Yeah. Um, Rhonda says, "One thing that has helped me when I miss my dad is picturing him on the other side with all our family that is with him. I picture them laughing and having a wonderful time together, and that makes me smile."
As it should. I'm so pleased you're able to do that.
Let's see. Barb is asking, how soon after your father passed did he come to see you?
Oh, let me see. Minutes. Very quickly. very, very quickly. You know, there are people who talk about, you know, how long it takes someone to come through from the spirit world after they've passed, and it does vary. It does depend. It depends on the relationship. It depends on how shy or how brave that person in the spirit world is, or how much they need to get through to you, to talk to you. But it can literally be minutes later. It can be, you know, these people who say, oh, you know, they have to have 3 months or 6 months. It's you know, maybe that's their experience, but certainly it isn't my experience. I've been able to talk to people within, actually within sometimes, occasionally seconds after they've passed. If I'm in the area, or if I'm there when they pass, I'm able to see them pretty much straight away. So it does not take a long time at all. It does vary a little bit, and it does vary with you know, the communication and how the communication is going, whether you communicate through someone like myself, or whether you're communicating with that person one-on-one yourselves, which can very often happen. You know, so there's no time frame, and it is not true that somebody has to have passed X amount of time before they're able to communicate. Simply not true. Let's get rid of that myth.
Well, you've told this story in the past, if I recall this correctly. I think you were in Burlington, Vermont, or you were in a hospital. Let's just say you were in a hospital, and there was a person who was in the ICU in a comatose state, and you spoke to them.
Oh yes, that was not in Burlington, Vermont. That was in golly, it was, but it was in Vermont, somewhere in Vermont. It was in a hospital in Vermont. Does it really matter? No, it doesn't. And the entire this man had a severe accident, a work accident, as it happened. Tons of stuff fell on him, and he was crushed. So he was still very much alive, though, and in a coma. And they did surgery and so on and so forth. And at some point, a family member got in touch with me and said, would I go to the hospital to give him healing, but also for the family as well. And we had, well, I got to know the family very well, but very quickly, because in these circumstances, you know, you do get to know people very quickly. And I got to know the family very quickly, and often sitting in the waiting room, the entire family there, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, you name it, lots of people there, everyone wanting to ask questions, everyone wanting to know, you know, what happens and so on, because pretty much most people knew that he was not going to survive, although there was still hope. But from time to time, I would go, while I was there visiting, I would go and stand with him and give him healing, this man who was, let's say, in a coma, but he actually was just simply waiting. And I was able to go and talk to him, saw him standing outside of his body, still attached to his body because it wasn't quite the right time. He was obviously waiting for something or for someone to turn up, and I was able to have some fabulous conversations with him. And one of those conversations early on at the beginning of this process was, I said to him, so do you know what you're going to decide to do? Because sometimes we can decide to stay around, but as I've said, when God calls, it's time. And he said, well, yes, as you can see, Rosemary, I'm practically out now. I'm, you know, I'm on my way, just waiting for this one thing. And I was at some point able to say to the family, in the gentlest of ways, he's on his way. Um, and I don't want you to be, you know, I don't want you to think that it's anything that you did or didn't do, or that you said or didn't say. But I'm going to suggest that anything you want to go and say to him, you should say to him now, because he's on his way. So yes, You see, you don't even have to have completely severed the cord in order to speak to someone like me. How about that?
That's fabulous. Annalie says, thank you for your wise words. They're truly helping.
Good. I'm
Um,
glad. So
all right.
glad.
And now Carol has a question. So she's saying, greetings all. I once again had the wonderful experience of a past loved one to remove and then put something back in a different place entirely. How do our loved ones do this? They must giggle at making such a joke on us, but
Oh,
they
I see.
must as well love us a lot to do this.
Yes. Oh, well, it's transference using energy, but it's a type of transference, or sort of, it's basically your loved ones can actually literally using that mind energy. You've seen it happen on television, right? You've seen magicians do this. You've seen, people think they've got invisible strings, but they're, you've heard of kinetic force of moving things, and so it's basically simply mind energy. If you receive something from the spirit world that wasn't there before, not just them simply moving objects from here to here, but if you actually receive a gift from the spirit world, then which from time to time people do, then that is called an apport, apport, an apport, an object, a gift from the spirit world. It happens rarely, but it does happen, and it's incredible when it does.
Andrew says, in my case, I received a phone call about 2:30 a.m. from the hospital. Before I left for the hospital, the lights flicked on and off.
Ah, nice little message. I hope you understand that, Andrew. I'm sure you do.
Cheryl's asking, have you seen the movie Phenomena with John Travolta? He
Yes,
supposedly is hit by alien light and develops amazing brain power. I can only
yes.
say he was not, but in the end, everyone celebrated his life.
Yes, it's a great movie. A really good movie.
Let us see. I think that's all the questions we have right now, Rosemary.
Okay.
Oh,
Well,
Maggie has one.
okay.
Oh, where did it go? Will my daughter help her sister not fall under pressure from her in-laws by moving into a house owned by a great uncle? Something's not right about this, and I'm getting warning bells.
Um, Maggie, that's a whole other thing. We need to go into that more, and certainly not on this show, because this show is about story time and we're keeping it light and simple. But here's the thing: people in the spirit world can only help you if you listen and pay attention, because otherwise, what are they going to do? So, will your daughter listen and pay attention? Is the question there. Um, okay, Chris, I think are we all done?
Well, there are no questions, so that means we probably are.
So I'm scooting off early then. So I'm taking this opportunity. My grandson is around still. They are dealing with the pool and the puppy. Can we see the puppy for 2 minutes, please? Reese, do you want to bring the puppy? Show everyone.
Carol
Hello?
wants to
There.
know if you're finding coins. Is that an apportation?
It's not an apportation, it's an apport. They are apports, should I say. Yes, they well can be considered to be an apport. There, look at that little boy. Yes.
Little Apache.
So, all right. Well, this is it, because I want to get out by the pool. I want to deal with my grandson. This is our last vacation day together. So, until I see you all again, we will be doing some off the cuff this next week. My daughter and grandson, they leave tomorrow. And so we'll be doing some off the cuff, and we'll be doing some other stuff. We'll definitely be back on Thursday for our Thursday show, The Spirit World Sees All. Until I see you all again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Chris. And of course, last but by no means least, thank you to Gregor, who's been here with us. Thank you to my darling boy. Oh, hello. Are you my darling boy too? Are you giving me cuddles? Can I have a kiss? I didn't mean from you. I meant the puppy. No, I'm teasing. I'm teasing. Of course, I meant from you. And so we're going to take out this little puppy, and we're going to just have a pool day today. Moses cooking roast duck with orange sauce. Duck à l'orange is what we're having for dinner today. So that's in a little while. So until we see you all again, and we might be taking dinner to the beach. You never know what we're going to be doing. You want to do that? Okay. All right. So until we see you all again, please, everyone, have a very blessed rest of the day. Ouch, that's my thumb. And have a very blessed weekend, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.